The breaking point, the moment when storms turn dangerous. A jetliner flies into a violent squall over an Arkansas runway.
Flight 1420, we've crash landed.
When the wreckage bursts into flames, passengers scramble to escape from the inferno.
That was like Night of the Living Dead or something.
A freak twister terrorizes a family on a farm in South Africa.
This is phenomenal. The most amazing thing I've ever seen.
A father fights to protect his son from being pulled into the vortex.
It was instinct. If anything must happen, I'm going with my son.
Powerful storms and the people who survive. Coming up on Storm Stories.
From the Weather Channel, this is Storm Stories with meteorologist Jim Cantore.
Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport. There is no sign of the advancing thunderstorms that have stranded passengers booked on Flight 1420, the busy 8 o'clock hop to Little Rock, Arkansas. Randy Hill is killing time in the departure lounge. He and another lawyer from the town of Arkadelphia, just south of Little Rock, are returning home from a business trip.
When we arrived in Dallas, they immediately told us the flight had been delayed, and then every 15 or 20 minutes they would tack on a little time.
Randy is anxious to get home to his wife, Jessica.
We were expecting a baby, and we were within the window of her due date.
Hello. He called and said, you know, I'm going to be late coming in, go ahead and go to bed. Planes are delayed all the time, and I didn't have a lot of concern.
Just as Randy is giving up on the idea of getting out of Dallas that night, the call comes to board the plane. Randy assumes the weather must no longer be a threat.
Yeah, wonder what the weather's like in Little Rock, though.
At 10:20, almost 2.5 hours behind schedule, Flight 1420 takes off toward the turbulent Arkansas skies with 145 passengers and crew. Randy isn't giving the storm a second thought until the pilot makes an announcement.
He mentioned that there would be a lightning show to our west, and true to his word, in the distance, you could see a brilliant lightning display.
Lurking behind the dance of light is a powerful force. It's a squall line. Randy is halfway through his hour-long flight. The plane and the squall line draw closer, but no one on board pays much attention, including Randy.
I had a book and some paperwork, and so I was kind of shifting back and forth between just reading and just looking out my side of the window and basically just riding home.
At home, the squall line is delivering a raging storm. Jessica is worried about her husband's arrival.
I just remember the lightning flashing so badly that it woke me up. A lot of thunder, and it was a very bad storm.
After shaking up Arkadelphia, the squall line intensifies. As it advances on Little Rock and the airport, air traffic controllers alert incoming aircraft. The storm begins spitting out wind gusts of up to 80 miles an hour.
When you have this preceding gust front, it's a sign that the storm is somewhere closer to the airport. And what this is there's downdrafts caused by the falling rain, falling hail. The downburst hits the ground and spreads out uniformly in all directions that can go out 20 miles in front of a storm.
At 11:30, Flight 1420 approaches the Little Rock Airport, and so does the squall line. As the plane is buffeted by turbulence, Randy grows uneasy.
As we dropped down around the city, you could see a black wall of weather. It's almost like a curtain moving toward the airport. Never seen lightning that close and that fierce. And the rain was so thick, it just looked like a sheet. And as we were maneuvering in toward the airport, the wind was starting to buffet us pretty good.
The plane is on final approach when suddenly the pilot pulls up.
I thought we were leaving and going back to Dallas to get out of the weather, and I was quite relieved. And to my surprise, rather than leaving the area, he just looped around and came back in from the north.
For Randy Hill and other passengers, the second approach feels even more terrifying.
Going so fast, and I'm sure that's because the pilot was trying to maintain stability of the plane because the winds were so violent.
The aircraft charges through the pounding wind toward the runway.
It was obvious immediately to me that we were in trouble.
Flight 1420 slams down on the rain-slickened runway and quickly veers out of control.
We immediately started sliding to the left and slid off the runway. You could also hear the brakes being applied, but there was no braking. You could feel the plane shifting off of the pavement onto the grass. You could hear the earth tearing up underneath the wheels. There was a lot of screaming and crying because we were completely out of control. It became very violent as we crashed through the landing lights at the end of the runway, and then all the lights went out.
The aircraft finally comes to a stop in a field at the end of the runway, torn into 3 pieces.
There was a moment of absolute pristine silence. There was no crying, there was no yelling, there was nothing. And at that moment, I thought, we're dead. This is what being dead is.
Passengers are just coming to their senses when a fire breaks out in the fuselage. Panic-stricken survivors rush to escape through the holes in the wreckage. Randy isn't so lucky. He's trapped along with a handful of other passengers in the crumpled forward cabin between the cockpit and the wing.
I was literally soaked in the jet fuel like a rag would be. So there you are, covered with jet fuel with fire coming at you from behind. It was close. I mean, I could feel the heat.
The growing wall of flames blocks any escape. Randy fights to think clearly. He must find a way out before the fire overtakes him.
The interior of the plane was fractured like an eggshell. And for whatever reason, I grabbed the interior panel and pulled on it, and it gave way, almost like pulling the door off. A big chunk came loose, and you could see into the outside.
The 10-inch hole in the fuselage is their only hope.
It was very jagged, obviously, from the plane tearing apart, and I just got caught. I remember thinking that if I didn't get out, nobody was going to get out. I had to go first, or nobody else could go.
With flames closing in, Randy desperately begins kicking at the mangled fuselage.
And after about 4 or 5 good, strong kicks, it let go.
Randy and the others scramble through the hole onto the field. They've escaped the burning wreckage. But there's no escaping the storm.
The wind was blowing so hard. The lightning was just hitting all around. So in the light of the lightning, I was just looking for anything for shelter. And I noticed these big round bales of hay, so it was the only shelter out there in a big field. And the lightning was striking so close to us that hair on my arm was standing up from the static. And I literally thought that we were going to die from the lightning.
Randy's colleague finds him amidst the chaos.
It was bizarre, like Night of the Living Dead or something. There was everything from people walking around to people lying on the ground with broke legs who couldn't move to people burned and people just stunned. I saw a man on his cell phone calling 911.
Have you been involved in an accident out there? We've crash landed.
When emergency personnel reach the scene, the storm has left survivors chilled to the bone. Randy Hill is also painfully aware of several bruised and broken ribs.
Hypothermia was setting in, my teeth were chattering, and I'm sure part of that was shock.
The survivors of Flight 1420, who aren't taken by ambulance, are transported from the accident scene by bus to the waiting arms of friends and family. In Arkadelphia, Jessica Hill is unaware of the crash. She waits patiently for Randy's call, expecting he's had further delays in Dallas.
And so I was just kind of dozing on and off, and I kept waiting and waiting for the phone call, and I called his cell phone, and I didn't get an answer. At about 1:15, he called me, and he said, honey, I'm okay. The plane crash landed, but I'm okay.
By the light of day, it seems unbelievable that 135 people actually survived the disaster. Tragically, 10 people did not, including the pilot. Accidents like this are studied at NCAR. Scientists routinely fly planes into thunderstorms to find and define the breaking point, the moment when a routine storm becomes a potential killer. TENNY LINDHOLM hopes a new system that displays real-time weather images in the cockpit may help prevent disasters like Flight 1420.
Having real-time weather updates in the cockpit, it's just like driving along, I guess, on the interstate system and being able to get a real-time update as to where the construction is, where the traffic jams are.
For Randy, life has slowly returned to normal. His daughter Claire was born 3 weeks after the accident.
I'm sure the birth of a child is a special moment for anybody and under any circumstance, but I can't imagine it being any more special because of, you know, almost not being there for it.
On a family farm just outside the South African town of Harrismith, local police officer KOBUS Venter is teaching his son the basics of their national sport. It's early morning, and already it's 80 degrees.
As the sun come up and as the morning goes, it just became hotter and hotter. Now, that summer was really hot compared to the other summers.
Too hot for his wife, Jeanette. Staying cool is a chore. She's 7 months pregnant.
Yeah, I was feeling tired. I didn't want to do much that day because it was so hot.
For Jeanette and her parents, it's just as well that her brother has canceled the family visit today. Instead, Dion DeWinter takes his wife, Anne-Marie, and their sons to a nearby park for a barbecue with other family members.
We decided because it's so hot, it would be better for us going to the park where there's shades and the children can swim in the river. And that's why we decided to go to the picnic rather than going to the farm.
The cause of these above-average temperatures may lie to the east in the Indian Ocean. The Agulhas current that slithers down the African coast has been packing more heat, possibly due to global warming. Scientists fear the current is disrupting the traditional weather patterns by pumping too much heat and humidity into the atmosphere, the fuel for powerful storms. ESTELLE de Koning is a scientist at the South African Weather Bureau in Pretoria.
There's a distinct dry line with a dew point variation of about 7 to 20 degrees.
More heat usually means more energy, and that would or can be the cause of more severe weather, because severe weather is caused by a lot of energy, a lot of temperature, and a lot of moisture.
It's mid-afternoon in Harrismith. The livestock at the Venter farm become restless. The weather is suddenly changing. A storm is brewing.
It was starting to get colder because there were lots of cloud cover, and it looked as it was starting to rain. And so we went inside the house and sit by the television and watched the movie.
In the park, the cooler weather is taking the sizzle out of the DeWinter's barbecue.
We looked up in the sky and the clouds were forming. We had clouds coming from two different areas. The wind suddenly started blowing, and it got worse and worse.
It's a dangerous sign. The sudden gusts mean cooler, humid air streaming in from the coast is clashing with the hot air parked over the interior.
We had a convergence of two different air masses, one warm, one cool, and one moist and one less moist. And in the area where these met, that is where Harrismith was lying that day.
Conditions are right for severe thunderstorms, but no one expects this. A tornado touches down just north of the Venter's farm. It's captured on video by a tourist.
Look at the speed of that climbing air. This is phenomenal. This is the most amazing thing I've ever seen.
Twisters are a rare sight in this part of the world. The United States gets more tornadoes in a year than South Africa does in a century. The Venter family has no idea that one of nature's most powerful forces is less than a mile away and closing in. At the barbecue, the De Winners spot the funnel cloud. Dion grabs his camcorder. What he doesn't know is that the Twister is on a collision course with his sister's family, just 3 miles away. At the farm, it's nap time for KOBUS Jr.
My little boy wanted to go to bed. He wanted to drink something. So I took him to the room. And all of a sudden, it was just a loud noise. I didn't know what was going on. Sounding like a Boeing 747 coming down on you.
Jeanette is in the kitchen getting her son a drink.
And when I looked out of the window, my brother's 3-ton lorry started moving on its own. So then I turned to run to our room. I was terrified because I know something is wrong, but I didn't realize what it was.
I was really terrified at that point of time. I first thought to myself, I must protect my son.
KOBUS throws his son to the bed and yells for his wife.
Then I went to the room and he told me to hit the floor.
Seconds later, the tornado scores a direct hit on the family farmhouse.
The roof was going and the bricks were flying, and with one hand I grabbed onto the bed. I was just terrified. I didn't think we would survive it.
With the house tearing apart around them, KOBUS continues to protect his boy from the swirling winds and flying debris.
It was instinct. If anything must happen, I'm going with my son. I can't let him go alone.
Jeanette, KOBUS, and their son survive 3 minutes of terror. The tornado moves off the farm and continues its destructive march. Coming up on Storm Stories, this tornado becomes very personal for Jeanette and the De Winners. A rare tornado in South Africa strikes Jeanette Venter's farmhouse. The Venter's home is barely standing. Inside, Jeanette remembers her parents, who had been sleeping in another room.
When I came in the room, my stepfather ran to me and he was covered with blood. And I asked him, where's my mother? And he said he doesn't know.
Meanwhile, the tornado that seemed so far away to the De Winners suddenly becomes personal.
While we were filming the tornado, the phone started ringing, and because John was filming it, I grabbed it and I answered the phone, and it was his sister, but I couldn't really hear what she was saying because she was hysterical, and I could just hear something is wrong and something about tornadoes, and she just said that we must come quickly.
The De Winner family drops everything and heads for the farm. What they see along the way fuels their worst fears. They call for an ambulance.
I couldn't really think that, a tornado can do that much damage. And while we were driving there, we could see the airport, and there was things lying all over the place.
Meanwhile, in the rubble of what was once a home, Jeanette finds her mother.
When I turned, I saw my mother's legs under the bed. So then I got hysterical because I thought my mother was dead.
But she has survived.
And so when she heard me, she said, no, I'm okay.
Dion and his family arrive at the house minutes later. There's no sign of life.
I couldn't see anybody there, so I screamed at them. I said, where are you? At that moment, my sister screamed from the back room.
By the time a paramedic arrives, Dion has moved his sister's family to his van. They're cold, bruised, and shaken, but very much alive.
I thank God immediately because I knew if it wasn't for him, we all would have been dead.
I think it was a miracle. Everybody was still alive and well.
The Twister carved a path of destruction 5 miles long. In a nearby township, 750 people are homeless. Miraculously, no one was killed or seriously injured. Next on Storm Stories, the tornado could be an ominous sign of things to come. Scientist Estelle believes the tornado may be a sign that global warming is pushing South Africa's weather to a volatile breaking point, turning seasonal storms into devastating disasters.
We have seen through research that the amount of severe weather events that happen are increasing. There's a lot of speculation going on about the effect of global warming all over the world. I think no one is able to deny that it's actually happening.
As if confirming the theory, over 9 more tornadoes ravaged South Africa over the summer, killing 50 people. 6 months after the twister destroyed their farm, the Venter family has a new home, a new family member, and a new outlook on life.
I take every day as it happens, because you never know when another tornado or something is going to change your life again. You appreciate your family more, because you never know if you're going to be able to see them tomorrow morning.
For Storm Stories, I'm meteorologist Jim Cantori. Your local forecast is next.